So there was this old house that was bought by two brothers. And this house was bought to be put on Airbnb, be fixed up. So they decided they were going to live there and fix the house up and get it remodeled and ready. Because it was in a great part of town and it's an old house from the 1800s, but in really good shape. They decided that, change the windows out and update the outside and paint it. So after the closing, they go on in and they just had a couple air mattresses and they bought some food at the local grocery store and put in the fridge that the old owners had left behind. And kind of alarming that they left so much behind. They left all the appliances and some furniture. So they're eating lunch that day. They're getting ready and they bought a new saw they were going to use and they got some lumber and they're going to take down a wall. And they decided, we've had enough today. We've worked enough. So they pulled out their air mattresses and they each had a bedroom upstairs that they decided, well, let's just call it a night. So both fall asleep pretty quickly after a long day. And they heard some noises in the house and woke them up. And it was kind of just weird things like the pipes and the creaking of the old house. Nothing too alarming or too out of place. So they didn't sleep really good the first night. So the second day, they work even harder. They get a lot more done. They tore out this entire wall now. And now they're going back to sleep. And their air mattresses didn't hold up the best. So they're putting a little bit more air in them tonight. A couple more pads underneath them just in case they deflate too much. And so one of the brothers falls asleep pretty quickly while the other one didn't really fall asleep. And he heard some arguing downstairs in the kitchen area. And so he quietly walks down the stairs thinking maybe his brother and his girlfriend or something were down there arguing. But it wasn't them. His brother was in bed sleeping. And this arguing seemed to be from an elderly couple. Kind of different kind of arguing. A little bit of nagging. And so he makes it to the kitchen and doesn't see anything. And turns on lights and checks around and the house is clear, the doors are locked. So he goes back upstairs and goes to bed. Next day, they wake up. He tells his brother about the story. And he thought he was crazy, of course. But he listened. And they said, well, let's just continue on with the projects. So they finish up and tearing out that wall. And they started painting the living room. And everything's looking really good. And then they hear, this is the middle of the day, they hear arguing. And this time they hear it downstairs in the basement. And so neither of them have spent a lot of time in the basement. That they knew it needed some work. It was pretty bad shape. The worst part of the whole house was the basement. So they make their way down the stairs, and the lights don't work in the basement. And there's only one light that's coming from the window, and that's all they can see in the basement because neither of them had any flashlights on them, but their cell phone's camera light was all they had. So they're shining what little light they do have downstairs, and they hear the arguing get louder and louder. And they shine over in the corner, the other corner, all around the room. To no avail, nothing there. But they can still hear the arguing. And so they go over to the other edge right behind the stairs, the other edge of the room. And the wall looks a little funny. It looks different in the fact that all the other wall is concrete, old mortar with rocks, stacked stone everywhere, except for this area, which is an old batten board type of material. So the brothers decide that we think the argument's coming from behind here now. So they take the sledgehammer out and they start taking down the wall. And it's probably about 5 to 6 feet wide, this gap in the mortar and the stacked stone foundation. And they make it through pretty easily. And there's another room. And it turns out the mortar and the stacked stone actually goes in and around to another room about 10 feet by 12 feet. And this is directly below the kitchen. And so as soon as they get in there, the dust has just filled the room with such dust from them smashing this wall down. Of course, there's no light in there. There's no windows anywhere. The one window in the basement that's shining light only shines in the other direction. So it wasn't helping them. And their lights weren't enough on their phone to peek through all this dust that they've just created. So they wait at the entrance calmly for the dust to settle, and they both put their shirts over their face to stop from inhaling all the dust particles. And they still hear the arguing, but now it's louder. It's a lot louder. And then they hear shouting. And then both of them look up, and as the dust clears, they see an old man and an old woman shouting at each other and stop. And they look back at them.